Hello everyone. Welcome to my teaching learning session of Foundation of Psychology. I am Sonal Singh Pawar, taking care of graduation courses of psychology for IGNOU, and Foundation is our unit. This stands out to be the last unit that we are doing, which is intelligence. Intelligence, as we so far has understood that it is the ability to understand well, reason well, and judge well. This is given by Alfred Binet. Alfred Binet has been one of the psychologists who started the thought of intelligence can be tested, there can be assessment, and we can assess intelligence as an attribute. Knowing that intelligence is an attribute, like an attribute that we have in personality, we can always test intelligence. We did few of the, to go for a quick revision of what was there in the last session, we would require it because the theories that we are doing is psychometric theory. So we should remember that intelligence is divided into or bracketed into two approaches that we have. One is an information processing approach, and the other is a psychometric approach. So, speaking of the psychometric approach that we have, psychometric talks about numbers because it talks about meters. So, we have quantity. So, the ones that we did in the last time, which was unifactor, Charles Spearman's two factor, where there are two factors that judge us that are we going to be intelligent or not. So, when we speak about that, remember, psychometric, they talk about having cognitive abilities, a stack of cognitive abilities. If you have all of them, you are going to be intelligent. Going back to Thurston's theory, even Thurston stated that there are seven primary abilities that we have. So, seven primary abilities, which is one, two, three, four, five, like indices of cognitive abilities, will make you intelligent. Now, information, on the other hand, is a very qualitative process, a very qualitative way of telling how people are thinking and how intelligent people are doing their course of activities or any event in front of them. So here again, the last theory that we did was Howard Gardner's theory. Howard Gardner's theory is very popular theory. To go back to it, yeah, in terms of it has eight intelligences, and Howard Gardner stated that intelligence can be multi in number, it is not one. So like the psychometric, you have one kind of set of abilities that can tell that you are intelligent, where when we talk about psychometric approaches, where quantity is the essence in information processing, quality is the essence. So Howard Gardner's theory stated there is no one kind of intelligence, there are multi-intelligence. So when we talk about multi, there are approximately eight. He's given another two, but eight are the one of the most popular because it is used in the educational field also. And speaking of that, there is logical, mathematical, there is naturalistic, inter and intrapersonal, which I think as psychology student, inter and intrapersonal should be something which is very high on us. There is flora, which is naturalistic intelligence, there is linguistic intelligence, and bodily kinesthetic, which stands out to be eight intelligences for us. So he stated that we do not have one kind of intelligence, we have multiple, and all of these. And it is also something to note that not every intelligent in you, let's take an example, if you have two kind of intelligences, which is linguistic, bodily kinesthetic, and intra and inter, you will not have even all those four in the equal capacity and an equal strength. Maybe linguistic is far higher, bodily kinesthetic is way higher than that, and intra is a little lesser, inter is a little higher. So they do form like a puzzle piece and help you function in your activity. So it will help you what? It'll help you to function in terms of how do you intelligently think, what do you intelligently think. So that's what Howard Gardner's concept is. Now we are proceeding with a similar kind of theories, which was information processing. Coming down to Cattell, Cattell gave a very beautiful thought. Coming down to Raymond Cattell, we should remember he's one of those psychologists who's given us one of the most popular personality test of assessment, which is 16PF, the 16 personality factor questionnaire. So Raymond Cattell is the same individual. And speaking of him, Raymond Cattell has proposed the notion of two kinds of intelligence. Again, it's something which is information processing. He does not say that all of us, have a number or a set, but he says there are two kinds. We can be divided into either of the two when we are functioning or processing any kind of information. So we have a fluid intelligence. Remember, fluid in terms of the word suggests that it's something which is flowing. It is something which is always in a movement sort of a thing. And the other is crystallized. Crystallized is probably it's formed, it's a little rigid, it's something which is having a shape and a structure. So, according to Raymond Cattell, he stated that fluid intelligence is the capacity to reason and solve new problems. So, there is no influence from any knowledge from your past experiences and information that you hold. So, when we speak about fluid intelligence, which is you are solving new problems, so there is a hint of creativity that comes into play because there's a hint of innovation, there's a hint of forming new answers to the old solutions that you have, putting down new concepts, probably forming new theories. But at the same time, when you're forming anything new, there are information also that is coming to you which is new in nature. So when I say it's new in nature, that suggests that this is telling you that you do not use your past experiences. Stating that you do not use your past experiences suggests that for example, let's take an example that you have a fight with a friend of yours, and you know that the friend is probably arguing at the same note of thought that you had previously, but you do not go back to your past experiences and use that information and then target your friend or then argue with your friend, but resolve it in a new way with the kind of argument that you have right now. So there are new solutions, there are new activities, you innovate here, and you make probably a new method of solving that problem right here right now. Also, because of the fact that there's newness, because of the fact that it's innovative, that goodness makes sure that you resolve things in a very logical way. So remember, when we talk about fluid intelligence, the reason that it's all flowing is it's stated as given as a term as fluid is because it is always moving, it's dynamic in nature. Dynamic because you solve the problems in a new way. Dynamic because of the fact that you do not use anything which is old, and it's creative also. And it gives you new logic to the probably the similar kind of situations. Like when we talk about children who are at the age of 5 and 6, I feel fluid intelligence is something which is going to be higher in these children because the reason for that is, when you deal with children, you'll get to know. For them, every new day is a new opportunity, and they see things because also their memory is very short span at that point of time. The knowledge that they hold is cannot be retained for a longer duration. So they see everything as new. Also, the fact that they forget very easily. That's the reason that the span of attention is less. So they tend to solve every new situation, every new day in a new way. So for them, they are very dynamic. There isn't any rigidity in their thought. They don't tend to go back to their past experiences. Now, Raymond Cattell at the same time stated, like we cannot, let's take, a pie chart and divide that into like divide a circle into half. Not everybody can be an entire circle. Not all of us can be a fluid intelligence. So he gave us a new intelligence, another kind along with fluid, which was called crystallized. Crystallize is the ability to use skills. So it will use your abilities and learned material. The learned material could be from classical conditioning, through observational learning. Probably you've imitated somebody before, like in time before, which could be a past your experience, and knowledge and something which has happened with you before, and it involves intellectual learning, as my PPT states, that one has accumulated throughout the lifespan. So remember, whatever that you've learned probably in class 4th, class 5th, class 7th, and standing in class 9, you might go back to those experiences, you might go back to that knowledge. So first, that the crystallized intelligence, yes, does hold the same pattern of functioning. One. Second, it is crystallized. It is a little rigid. We would not find any sort of dynamicness here. There isn't anything which is flowing, so you do not find a new state of creative thought coming here, a new knowledge coming here, because this is intellectual functioning. Intellectual functioning and intellectual learning is something that you've learned as a child. You will remember it as an adult. Like, let's take an example, you go for an interview, and that interview is like amazingly, it's a fabulously done interview by you, and the kind of questions that were asked to you at that point of time, you just keep a note of that. And let's take an example, another 2 years, you feel like you need to change now because this was just a head start for your career, and you move for your new interview, like multiple interviews to shift from that space. Won't you remember the same questions, the way you sat in that interview, the way you introduced, and you used those, those topics and those learned skill, which is it's a skill, it is an ability of presenting yourself, and it was an intellectual learning. So why intellectual learning? Intellectual learning is fixed. Like IQ is always fixed. It will never change. Your ability to perform at a task averagely will remain same all the time. So that is something which is crystallized intelligence. Knowing that, he said that this is something which is going to be accumulated like in the lifespan. So it goes to your long-term memory. It stays there. You keep retrieving it from there. So when we studied memory, remember all the information is in the long-term memory, and you keep retrieving it back again, back again. So it's the same information coming, flowing in, flowing out, flowing in, flowing out. There's no creativity. There's no innovation. So this intelligence is expressed in the form of one's vocabulary and general knowledge, which is very true. Imagine the political parties have a 5 year of running in our country. So won't we remember the cabinet very well? For the 5 years, we remember that cabinet, and that becomes the general knowledge for the 5 years that we have. So the prime minister, external affair minister, the home minister, we remember their names, we remember their kind of work, and it stays for us for the 5 years. So it's the knowledge, the general knowledge that stays with you. And so is vocabulary. Tell me how many of you are reading, if you're well read individuals, they use the same terms which they've read in the book. So it's the vocabulary that keeps coming back. So it's stayed in the long term, stayed with you as a past knowledge, as a past experience, and you use it. Let's differentiate between the two. My image here, completely. As I said, it's such a flowing thing. Remember, it's like a puzzle piece. You keep joining in new things. I'm sorry, the image is not very clear, but I'll tell you what it says. It's an ability to learn something new, which is the fluid intelligence. Yes, the fact when it's creative, it is very abstract. Abstract suggests it's not fixed. You can go beyond the box and think about it, and it shows water, it shows puzzle pieces, because you keep fixing any object in piece over there which is coming out of the blue. Speaking of crystallized intelligence, you see, it's book learning. It's a complete book learning. Increases with age, which is obvious because of the fact that you have wisdom that comes from the facts that are stored. So it comprises of what? It comprises of the facts that you guys have been storing there. So that completes with the two kind. Raymond Cattell has equally given personality thought. Now let's move to another kind. It's a huge theory. This is called the past theory. I'll just keep the head title, and I'll give you a little information about it. So past theory is one of the longest theory of information processing. So when I say the longest theory, I suggest that the functionality of the theory, I'll explain you with two examples today. So PASS it's an acronym given for planning, attention, arousal, and the SS is simultaneous and successive processing. So that's how it suggests to be. It's like an acronym given. It's a huge theory, and it tells you again. Let's go back to information processing theories and approaches. Why PASS comes under that? Because of the fact that the past theory actually tells how an intelligent person actually acts. So if you want to do a behavior, how do you do it intelligently? That is what information processing is all about. This theory was given by three psychologists, J.P. Das, Nigleri, and Kirby. We'll have to remember J.P. Das because he did even give the third slide that we'll be discussing. They proposed that planning, attention, simultaneous and successive theory was the past model theory. And let's start with, we will not go according to the way that I've mentioned. I'll go according to two examples that I gave you, that I'll be giving you, and then we'll come down to the written context of my PPT. So let's understand how this P, A, and SS functions. So let's take first example. Your teacher suddenly enters your room, and in this, she suddenly states that I am going to take a surprise test of the content which has been taught to you for the 2 days that you had. So the past 2 days, whatever that you were taught, your teacher just comes in and just declares that there is going to be a test in next 5 minutes. So revise. What does this gives you? It gives you arousal. So as soon as the body is aroused, tell me your attention increases. So remember, arousal is paramount for attention. I mentioned it over here. Attention allows a person to attend to a selective stimuli and ignore the rest. So remember, whatever she's teaching, let's take an example. Your psychology teacher comes in and tells you, I'm taking a test today. So as soon as she states that, what do? You quickly open the psychology book. So it is selective attention. It's of the selective stimuli, which is of the selective subject that you're doing, and you attend to it. How did it happen? Because of the declaration of the fact that there's a test. That test gave an arousal to the body. So this arousal made you attend to the content. Now remember, arousal is paramount for attention to take place. So what kind of arousal is paramount? Adequate amount. Let's take another example. How adequate amount? So example, if your teacher comes in and say, I'm going to take like a 3 test of 3 subjects right now within 10 minutes. Remember, this is too much of arousal. Some of the children are going to experience a lot of anxiety conditions. They are not going to perform. That's too much of arousal. A. Now coming down to something which is too less of an arousal. Now a teacher comes in, she says, I'm going to give you just two questions today, and you'll there be a surprise test out of the two questions. Do you feel for two questions kids are going to study? No. That's a minimal level of arousal. So very less and very much arousal really does not function for attention. Adequate amount of arousal is important for you to attend to an object. So the teacher who came, she gave an adequate amount of arousal. How did she give an adequate amount of arousal? Stated that I'm going to take a 15 marks of test right now, which is a good number, and of the topic which was taught for 2 days. So that's like, yes, the topic was relevant. Now I can take a test and you start attending to the course things and you start revising for it so that you perform well. Now, decided that you're aroused, decided that you attend to the two pages or 4 pages that you've done in the past 2 days. Now, how to do it comes down to S and S, which is simultaneous or successive arousal. So, successive, how does simultaneous takes place? Some people and some children might just take the stimuli as a whole and they integrate the different pages. Like, let's take an example: you have a test of intelligence only, so that student picks up topics like I'll do the theories, and after the theories, I'll learn the name of psychologists. I'll even learn the assessment of intelligence. So this is like a very holistic thing. How did this holistic learning start? When the person integrated topics together. How do I need to learn it? Define intelligence, then do the theories, then learn the assessment. So this is integrating the parts together as a whole. So this is something which we talk about as simultaneous processing. So simultaneous processing is seeing something as a whole and then integrating them together. The next is successive. Successive is the most easiest one, which is going by sequence wise. However, your teacher gave you the topic and the notes, you learn it in the same sequence. Like question one had 5 points. So if this question comes, I will write the 5 points in the same sequence. Best example for this thing is a serial order learning, which could be of tables, it could be of alphabets, it could be pointers that your teachers have given to you, and you like literally write all the points in the same order. So that's like successive processing. So once, let's take an example, the child feels that I probably want to do simultaneous and not successive because it's a quality content. In psychology, you cannot rote learn, so you cannot go by sequence, rather learn the quality of it. So decides that I'll learn it as a whole and I'll integrate them together as topic and then present it. Now, processing is done, the how to learn is done. Now happens the final stage. The P comes exactly at the first, but in the entire theory and the example and in real life and the real time functioning, P is the last thing and one of the most essential thing. It's one of the most essential and important step here. When the individual actually makes a decision that the problem that I'm solving, am I using the right processing? So this is done to give a self check to the processing to find out if the problem that you have in hand, is it being carried well? Is it being done well? So if, for example, the child is taking the test and just realized no, simultaneous processing did not really work well with me, I should have done sequence wise because the topic has a lot of pointers which are asked, like enumerate this topic. So pointers are needed. So probably now next time when the teacher comes into class, the child, if asked for a test, will go with the successive processing. So what is planning doing as an important step, as a final step? Helping you make decision that this problem that is being solved, is it being solved with the right processing? The how that you've taken, is it right? And if you feel it is right, then what happens? You go on. Planning is successful. The planning tells you it's the last part. So it is evaluating and telling you that you've done well. Simultaneous processing is perfect for you. But if it's not, it makes you go back to the success processing levels, change the processing in the next time, and plan checks it. So that's how planning happens. So planning, like the term, is not to plan it out. Planning is the term to see the execution. The way that you're executing, is it really fruitful? Is the plan A really functioning well? If not, then you go to the plan B. This is the first example. Now I'll give you another example which is present. I usually tell it to my kids, the ones who are learning foundation can go back to NCRT books. They like the first step to learning, and simple examples are there. So let's take another example to understand class model. Let's take an example. There's a child who is, probably in a supermarket with the mother. The mother is busy buying stuff, and suddenly the child feels hungry. Now the child is literally just tapping the mother and asking, "I need food." The mother is not aroused. A simple tap, the mother is not aroused. What does the child do to make the arousal really high? The child lays down on the ground and starts crying. What does the crying on the floor gives the mother? A good level of arousal. She was in the less level of arousal where the child was just tapping and reminding, I need to go, let's go out, let's just move out to the supermarket and eat. But the mother doesn't listen because she feels that she needs to finish her shopping. So now when the child lies down and starts screaming, that's like an alarm. That's like an arousal, an adequate level of arousal that I really need to pick up my child. She picks up the child and tells and pacifies that that's okay, fine. She attends to the need and asks the child, what do you want to do? Child says, I want to eat within like in a span of 5 to 10 minutes. The mother quickly winds up, buys the stuff within 10 minutes and pushes out. Arousal happened, attention took place. Now will happen the processing, which is successive or simultaneous. So let's take the successive first. Successive is the mother takes the child to the food, the food area, where there's a, you know, where you end up finding so many outlets of, eating joints. The mother sees successively, you want to go here, 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 here. So it's like one, two, three. You pinpoint successively. We're taking a walk. You pinpoint, and we end up sitting the place that you mark on. So that is successive, like one, two, serial orderly going and walking by. That happens. Let's take an example. The mother just randomly the child picks any and goes and sits. But the child is unable to read the menu. It's very complex. The food is really complex. The child really needs simple food. So the mother feels this plan is not working. So we came down to plan. Plan is not working. What do? We go back to processing. Now the mother integrates the experiences of child and tells the child that you probably like home cooked kind of foods. You do not have a cuisine that you like at the moment. Being a 7 and 8 year old, you've not developed that thing. You do not like something which is Italian or Chinese. You probably like home cooked food. So she takes the child to an outlet where she gets a platter and the child feels satiated and happy. That was simultaneous, which is integrating experiences, seeing the problem as a whole, and then solving it. So that comes down to the plan be executed well, and the mother might use that again later whenever it is required. So this is the past model, and this is how you even function using these three, neurological activities in your brain, which is planning being one, attention arousal being the other, and simultaneous and successive processing. That finishes with past model. It's one of the most elaborate models of information processing. Literally tells you how an intelligent person thinks that you have. Now, I hope you see the picture that tells you how are we functioning. As I said, why these are neurological units? Because the brain is also equally functioning. So the input comes in. See, the first is you get attended and aroused. After the attention and arousal, the simultaneous and successive processing happen. That moves the information to the frontal area. The frontal lobe is here. So this is like if you see in terms of the physiological body and the physiological brain, the structural brain that we have, you have a frontal lobe here. That lobe is for decision making, perception, memory, and personality, and that makes you plan things. So that's the final output that you have, which gives out an output that you planning, probably waiting for. So this is like the last theory of information processing. We have another theory which came because of culture that you moved on to. I hope it's visible to everybody. This is the theory of technological intelligence. The reason that we stated them to be as technological and non-technological, there was a psychologist Vygotsky, and Vygotsky essentially emphasized the role of culture in intelligence. So, what is culture? Culture is just not a set of beliefs and values that you have, but a culture brings about along with the beliefs and the value system, the language, the rules, the norms, and the kind of literature that you get associated in that culture, the kind of inheritance that gets associated through that culture. So, culture is a very holistic term and a very huge term to take in consideration. So, don't you feel that intelligence can be impacted by that? It can be. Vygotsky stated the same that when we are talking about culture, intelligence and culture are highly related. That's how technological intelligence came in, and there's a non-technological intelligence also that we'll just discuss a little briefly. So culture has an influence on intelligence. Vygotsky emphasized on the role of socio-cultural factors, like the areas that you live in, that you grow, that you learn, actually tells you how do you act. So let's take an example. People who are living in Delhi NCR, they have their own ways of intelligently associating to things, events, and situation. Similarly, let's take an example. People living in down south of the country has another way of associating to intelligence, which is they feel that they are very good with their intellectual capacity. They feel, yes, they do feel superior, but at the time They're very holistically learning things, not only in the impact of their knowledge, which is being taught, but also the culture, the social, cultural factors influence them also at a greater level. So the two people living in the other state of the country and another state of the country will have a different kind of intelligence. Why? Because the kind of place that you grow, learn, get your knowledge from highly impacts you, according to Vygotsky. So Vygotsky forwarded this view to promote that culture promotes intelligence. So he actually gave this view to tell you that culture promotes your intellectual ability. It promotes the intellectual development also. So now he stated that the technologically smart countries, let's take technology at the moment, technologically smart countries are Europe and America. So and the non-technological smart countries are Asian countries at the moment. So, but I do feel this is a 10-year back thing. I'm sure core Asian countries are very technologically smart today. So, what do we understand by technologically smart, intelligent features of these kind of intelligent? They value high order thinking, which is HOTS, the high order thinking pattern that they really appreciate. They state that mental order is something which is very superior. It is culturally determined also, so the way you analyze, the way you synthesize a situation, the way you structure a situation highly depends upon something which is cultural dependent. Now technological intelligence also impacts on speed, like it emphasizes that speed, the IQ, the way you perform, the skills that you use, your attention span, the speed of writing, the speed of performing, analysis, your levels of achievement is something which is important for a technological smart country. Now let's take, and they're very achievement oriented also, like I have written, they're very achievement oriented. They will associate your intelligence equivalent the amount of achievements that you've done in life. Now, speaking of something which is a non technological smart, let's go opposite. Non technological smart countries are more collective. They view that not speed and power, but collective work, working together, giving emphasis to not to speed and power, but giving more emphasis and value to collective work, joint work, work that involves not performance but involves something which is understanding, prioritizing, not something which is speed, not something which is skills of attention, not the power of your attention, the span of your attention, and something which is analysis. So, non technological smart is more Indian originated countries that we have, like that values both cognitive and non cognitive process. We value both of it, the way you think and the way you organize situations and processes. So, non technologically are more collective, but technologically smart are more individualistic because they're very power oriented, they're very achievement oriented. That finishes with the theories of intelligence. And with the last that I said, we need to remember JP Das. This is the last finishing our theory because JP Das was also a part of the Indian intelligence context. So this is like completely our country intelligence, which is integral intelligence, reflected in the name itself, the Indian intelligence called the integral. As the name suggests, this intelligence is a very holistic intelligence. It gets about not only the cognitive but non-cognitive processes also, your ability to think, reason, problem solve, but also the non-cognitive processes that you do, which is just observation, mere observation, mere writing, mere recollecting and memorizing an event through imitation. So it gets in everything together. This was given by Mishra and Srivastava in 2007, which is very close. The main competency in the integral intelligence would be emotional, cognitive, entrepreneurial, and social. So social competence would be people who are very high with interpersonal intelligence. They associate with others, respect others, and understand their feelings and emotions. Competence of entrepreneur would be people who are very high, who have perseverance and committed, dedicated to work lifestyles, and work performance based achievement. Then we talk about cognitive. Cognitive are people who have high order level of thinking, can perceive well, reason well, decide well. All cognitive that we have. So remember how integral intelligence is manifested? It is by both. Your heredity and environment are collectively responsible for this. So you can do both. So when we say you can do both, that suggests that your integral intelligence can be coming from your heredity, which is your parents, and also can be coming from the enriching environment that you're a part of. According to Sri Aurobindo, he stated that the aim of intelligence should be and is a direct cognizance without the mediation of senses and hence without distortion brought about by the ego. So your intelligence should be a collection of the information that you get from all your senses but not interrupted by your ego. Nothing to do with eyes. I can do better. I am better than the other person. No, a simple collection of the learning that you do from all your senses. That is intelligence. That's how Baral and Das in 2005 also supported, which was Aurobindo's idea. So this is an integral Indian intelligence, which is both cognitive and non-cognitive process, very holistic in nature. It says that you have a lot of competence within these intelligence, which is emotional, social, entrepreneurial, and cognitive. So let's now move to the next, which is the picture. These are the capacities that I've already mentioned. You can have a glance on that, a glance on it, which is cognitive is discrimination, the problem solving competence, the communication. Social is respect for social order, committed to other people, high concerns and respect for others. Emotional is a regulation. Emotional regulation is high with emotional competence, being polite, good conduct, self evaluation. The next is entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is, as I said, commitment to work, perseverance, high vigilance, hardworking people. So these competence will always be a part of your integral, and such a holistic kind of intelligence that we have. Now let's move to assessment of intelligence. Let's understand why do you even need assessment? Do we really need to identify IQs? Is there a need? Do we need to really assess intelligence? It is a need. I'll tell you why. There are two major reasons. First is individual differences. We do not get to know how one person is better, lesser, or needing support. We don't get to know those individual differences. Second, that we need intelligence is to help identify people's potential and help people who are very lesser in their intelligence value. Which is, let's take an example. In school, we have specific learning disabilities which are identified. Remember, if you never get to know that a child has a specific learning disability, how will you support or help the child? So that is why assessment of intelligence is hugely important. Let's understand how this idea came in. As I started with today's session with the same thing, Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon, I mentioned Alfred Binet, Theodore Simon, attributed to the first attempt which was made to measure intelligence. They stated that it's important that you're assessing and measuring it. Why am I not using the word find? Remember, finding is to search, and measurement will give you a number. So it's going to assess. It gives you an IQ. So a number is fixed and rigid. That's why it's going to measure intelligence. Intelligence is always measured or assessed. It is never found or searched. It's not an experiment, it's testing. Then, in 1905, the first intelligence test was given by Binet and Simon. It was a Binet-Simon intelligence scale. And later in 1908, they coined a term called mental age. Mental age is a measure of the intellectual ability of a person. So, what is your intellectual ability of a person in comparison to the age that person is? So, is an 8-year old actually behaving and judging the world, understanding the core competence of that age as per the age level and the age questioning or the age count which is required? So, as per that age count, are you as intelligent as is required? So, that's called the mental age in comparison to the chronological age, which is the physical age that you have. They gave a formula also that MA upon CA into 100. 100 was used to take care of the decimal values and provide you the intelligence level in percentages. So, according to Binet, if a child has an MA which is higher than the CA, I'm sure, get to know, let's take it out, like mentally score it. If a child is a 10-year-old child and the intelligence is of a 12-year-old, remember 120, which is into 100, upon something which is an 8, the mental age is going to be extremely higher. It comes down to be more than 50% for the child. So let's take it a 5-year-old child is having a 10-year-old intelligence. Remember, it's going to be 200%. The child is 200% intelligent. So that's how we find out if the mental age is higher, the child is going to be talented and bright. Remember, if the mental age is lesser, the mental age usually goes down as a 20 or 30, 40%. So that's actually a very simple way of finding IQ. So IQ is equivalent to MA upon CA into 100. Now we will find out the IQ demarcations also. These are IQ values that I'll just read it out for you. 140 to 160 are very highly intelligent, bright people. These are also one of those who are intellectually gifted. Then we have gifted individuals, which are advanced and very highly intellectually superiorly gifted are 140 and 60. 120 are just superior, people who are just better than the others, better than the rest. Above averages, who is getting a percentage of 70 and above. Someone who's be 80 would be a superior, someone 90 would be gifted, someone who just gets 100 or 100 or probably is way too talented is very gifted and very superior. Now the average is 90 to 109. Today, it's also 100 to 109. There could be shifting of the IQ numbers according to the culture also. And low would be 80 to 90, 80 to 89. Remember, low average are children who are dullers, slow learners in your class. And then there are borderlines. Borderlines are 70 to 90. Remember, below 70, it's causing problems. So anything which is coming from 70 to 73 requires attention. You either help them and pull them up, or they probably get drifted to now retardation. Retardation starts from 70 and 79. Anything which is at the something which is low average needs a lot of improvement. I think I missed the two numbers. So anything which is above 70, like below 70, comes down to borderline. 60 55 to 69 are mildly, and something that goes down to 40 to 54 are moderately. Remember, anything that goes down below 40, which is 30, they are profoundly um, mentally disabled. So they require support, all time supervision. They cannot function with alone without on their own. They function with people. With moderate, we can give them a little supervision. They can go back to the exclusive schools that you have, normal schools, but they would require support and a mother teacher, or a additional teacher to support that child. Mildly impaired kids can function with a little bit of support and little skill development to them, so they can be improved. Low average can extremely be improved. They we can work on them a lot. Now let's understand the normal probability curve that we have. This is a beautiful curve that I found, which actually gives you that how is this number falling onto the curve of the population. Normal probability curve is the curve where reflection of intelligence. So remember, here on the right hand side, you'll find children who are above average, excellent people. So the last 10% is excellent people. The above expectations are 15%. The maximum are the averages of our country. Most of us will fall down to 100, 105, 107, 109. That is the largest population. Remember, the below average is also 15% and the lowest is also 10%. We do not have, remember, we do not have the lowest and the below averages to be a usual number. We do not have that. It's always going to be the averages which are going to be highest. It's a bell-shaped curve. This is the feature of non-probability. There's another thing which is missed here. The curves do not touch the line because intelligence does not have a starting and an ending point. You do not have a zero of intelligence. You do not have 100 of intelligence. So the curves do not touch here, but in the picture, because it's a very aesthetically pretty picture, it has it. And it's a bell-shaped curve. That's one feature. The mean averages are the center, which is the 50% of the population. It's a mirror image. Why it's a mirror image? Because 15 is the highest and the below also, and the least and the uh, serious under performance are also 10%. So they are mirror. If you close this normal probability, they are mirror images, which is symmetrical in nature. This finishes with the assessment, why it's needed, how it looks in terms of our population, what are the various IQ numbers, which is averages of our country in superiors. Let's come down to the types of tests quickly. This is a very simple thing. People who wish to do psychology as counselors and assess specific learning disabilities, you would require this. So first, let's start with the types of tests. There are multiple types of tests that you have. There's an individual test. Individual tests are tests which is administered individually. You give it to people individually. You have one person, you give it to one on one. There is a rapport formation. You are thoroughly available for the person over there, like they're sitting there for their doubts. So, a few examples are Kaufman scale, Stanford Binet test, Wechsler intelligence test scales. These are intelligence tests which are individual in nature. You cannot give it to a group. You have to be there, form a rapport, sit with these people until they finish it. Then Stanford Binet test is one of the first tests as we started prior, like in the prior slides. 1905 these tests were given. It's been revised multiple times and also available in India. Now comes to group testing. Group testing, a test which is given to probably a 20 together. More than one people can be administered. You ideally do not require any rapport formation. Very quick. You get 10 results at the same time. So it's low on cost, low on energy, and low on scores. So there are many group tests which is multidimensional. Usually aptitude testing is done. If counselors are watching this, you would realize that aptitude tests are done in a collection of 20, 30 together, because the instructions are given like simultaneous to all 20 or 20. So aptitude battery tests are done, batteries collection of tests, and cognitive ability test again done together. Fair intelligence test is again done together. Raven's progressive matrices is also a group test. It is also an example of another kind of test that we will do later. So this is a group test. Group test of fairly better because of the kind of huge number of data that you get in, less amount of rapport formation, less on energy, less on time, huge number of data. That's group test. But intelligence test has their own, the pluses that we have. Now let's come to another kind, which is verbal and non-verbal tests that we have. What are verbal tests? The verbal test assesses your verbal intelligence, which is the ability to reason well, read well, understand well the language. So when you know that it requires learning, reading, and assessing a language, what do you feel? It has to be done only by literates. So it's like a target point under remembering. Verbal test can only be done to people who can comprehend a text, and read a text, which is it is a test which is based on language. So you give it only to people who are literates. So this is given to children who are literates. It cannot be given to illiterates. So this is a verbal test. Now, you know, we have to cater to a population. We cannot have all the tests which is capable of individuals who are literate enough. We have people who are not even till 15 years of age. They are not literate. And what do? We, to overcome this limitation of a verbal test, we came up with testing which is called the non-verbal testing. I'll give you the example of the verbal test. See, now complete the series of 7, 3, 14, 6, 21, 9. This requires literature. Which number is out of place? 28 out of 22, 24, and 18, because there's a gap of 2, 2. A, B, C, D, H, L is again a gap and an odd number. So this all requires something which is reading and literature. Can only be given to literate people, can only be given to people who are 15 years of education or 12 years of education minimum. And some of the examples of verbalized tests at Kaufman scales are some of the non-verbal tests that we have, which is opposite to it. Kaufman and Stanford Binet test are literature-based tests, so it's like cannot be given to illiterates. Now, to overcome the verbal ability problem, we had something which is non-verbal test. Non-verbal tests are so fabulous and so good. You can give it to illiterate people. You can give it to people who are coming from a low strata, low income strata, does not have a complete understanding of, the culture also. They have the ability to analyze and solve problems according to picture and matrices, figures. Right? They do not use words. They do not use words. So there will be diagrams, there would be picture, there would be colors. Simple colors, it could be black and white also. So black and white is simple. Black and white is something which is, it's black and white is equal in all culture. You see it similarly in all cultures. So non-verbal tests contain pictures, they contain diagrams, they contain geometrical figures in the form of exercises. I'll give you the picture. You love to see it, and after the session, you can really look forward to it too. And the best example here, which people use it in school, Raven's progressive matrices is one of the best example, and I'll tell you why it is called Raven progressive matrices. Ravens, because it's given by J.C. Ravens. Most of the intelligence tests are after somebody who's given it. So, like Binet and Simon test was by them. It's J.C. Ravens who's given this test. It's one of the best non-verbal tests that we have. It was developed in Great Britain by Ravens, and it consists of matrices, which is designs which is common to all the cultures. And one part of the design is removed. So, like a puzzle, you need to fix the missing part. Very simple, and it's progressive because the difficulty level in the 60 items, you tend to complete 60 questions, which are called items in psychological test. You complete them, and the difficulty levels from the first 10 to 20s to 30s and 40 questions till the 60th question, the difficulty level is quite high. So that's why it's called progressive. It's progressing in their difficulty level. Matrices, because there are designs which are incomplete that you need to do. It is for all grades successfully till the grade of 17. The scorings are different. It's applicable till 60 years of life also, as per the scoring. And testing is essentially only till 16 to 17 years of age, as per the norms. And I'll show you the picture. You can then go through it. See. So look at the picture. Look at the first three. Tell me which is the most applicable. So these are patterns that you need to see. First, see the horizontal pattern that you have. You have a triangle within a circle. So there's a circle, triangle, and square. The second also has a circle, triangle, and square. Remember what's missing in the last line. The last line has a triangle which is missing, and a triangle needs to have what? It needs to have a square within itself. It cannot have a triangle itself cannot have a circle, because a circle is already there. Circle is already there in the, in a square. So the best fitted answer is C over here. So it's very simple. You find it very simple, but it gets progressive. I'll give you another picture here. This is progressive difficulty level. The first picture to the second picture you will see is very difficult. It goes higher in difficulty levels. So see, let's see the first pattern that you have here. There's a circle with a line which is vertical. There's a circle with no line. There's a circle with a horizontal line. And then there is a square. So there are three pattern things. Then there's a square which is again a horizontal, vertical line and escape thing. Now we have something which looks like, a figure which has lot of sides within it. It has an empty space. It has a horizontally designed, but it does not have a vertically designed line. Which is going to be the best answer with this? Three. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, the third one is the best answer. Relatively simple, but from the first picture that I showed is it's increasing ability because the figures are getting confusing. It has too many lines and too many boxes now. So that is Raven's progressive matrices. It comes in black and white also and comes in colored also. Standard progressive is black and white, and there are other colored progressive is something which is colored in nature. Colored would have their own. It increases because colors are different in different countries, where black and white is completely, which is a culture fair also, which is the next topic that we come down. So we did what? Individual, group, verbal, non-verbal, and we will do something which is performance that we need to see. Performance is very similar to non-verbal because it reduces the biases of culture. It reduces the biases of literature. Performance tests are those tests where the subject needs to manipulate objects and put the objects from one space to the other. I don't know if you guys remember when you were in the really younger class, like nursery and prep and LKGs, you had this board which was star shaped, circle shaped, square, standing line, and you fix one into one, two into two, a circle into circle. Those are manipulation. For a 4-year old, that was a performance based test that you had. So it does not use language, it uses just items and motor skills, no verbal ability required. It's again a culture fair test that you have, like the non-verbals, includes mazes and a board that you have. So performance test is a kind of verbal test, but remember, not all verbal tests are performance. There in the Raven progressive matrices, we weren't manipulating. We weren't using our hands. So when you don't use your hands, it's not manipulation. Now, so we remember the biases of culture and literature reduces in two kinds of tests, verbal and performance. So these are one of the best tests that you have, remember. Now let's come to culture fair test that you have. This will finish, these testings will finish something which is the session of the entire foundations of psychology for you. For you all, remember there are 9 sessions. You can go back to all those sessions and learn the foundation of psychology, the entire book. Now, coming to culture fair test. Remember the term fair is stating what? They're unique to a specific culture, to most of the culture. So they're fair in terms of language, values, expectations, and demands. Remember, every culture has its specific language, has its own specific intonation, terminologies, and something that is not acceptable to another culture. But these are those kind of tests which is fair. The experiences and environmental demands are fair to all cultures. Languages is common to all. Like a test in English would be common to all, where you know where the population learns English as the first language. For us as Indians, Hindi is the first language. It should be first language, but schools has English because that's what the mode of the medium of our education is. But for a Hindi medium, Hindi is the first language. So that's going to be a culture fair test over there. So a child who was reared in US was very different in respect to child which is brought up in Indian culture. So culture fair has to be a culture fair test in India has to be fair to the Indian culture, and a test which is made in US has to be according to their norms, their own culture, and their own language and verbal abilities. Now, due to this reason, when we understood that there are assessing individuals that belong to different culture, we need to make test which is respective to their culture. Like the first test of intelligence, which was Binet. Simon and Binet test was converted into Urdu also by SMOC, and in Bengali also and Punjabi also by Mahalobonese. So these are some psychologists who converted into culturally biases test, which is also called culture-based test. So culture fair test are called the culturally fair test are called no culture bias test, and there are another one which completely favors the culture. This is we missed out. This is the example of a performance test. I hope you see the block, a huge rectangle and a square block, which is performance, and you have blocks inside it. It's called a pass along test. You need to make that thing by manipulating the boxes. So people who will be doing graduation, or the even masters you might do in your practicals, all of these testing. So these are performance because you use your fingers and hands, and it's very common to our culture. You just have to fix to the similar kind of colors. Even if the people don't know the colors, they know there are these are two different shades, have to be made by these two different shades that you have. So it's culture fair, and it's non-verbal. You do not require any verbal ability. And there are an experimenter who supports these card one after the other. So you just do the changes in the blocks that you have. So this is a performance, which is a non-verbal test also. A performance and a kind of a culture fair. And remember, not all non-verbal tests would be something which is performance, but most performance are non-verbal tests. Now let's move to one of the last things that we have, which is a draw person test. Looks very interesting. See, a draw person test is usually used with children. It was given by Goodenough in 1926. One of the first tests again found after 1908 and 1910 that we have. So speaking of that, remember later this was revised into it was revised into various version 1963. That 183 is it's a typo error. These were in the initial times called the Goodenough and Harris drawing test. As I said, people usually gave tests in their own names. So you can remember draw a person test as a bracket type. Draw a person test. So, and we'll come to culture bias test also after this. This is based on the thought of projective technique. You guys have done personality as a session with me. So when we speak of personality assessment, we have projective techniques. Those techniques have pictures like Rorschach in block test. We have, TAT, thematic a perception test, which there's a picture and you analyze the picture. This is based on the same pattern. You make the subject or the participant or your client as a child draw a picture. So this requires the test taker, which are essentially children. We do not do it at young, on elderly individuals, like on adults also. If I say not even 20-year-old individual, we do it only on children. We usually tell them to make three pictures on three separate papers. So we tell them to draw a man, draw a woman, and we tell them to draw themselves. So I'm sure the children have parents, so usually they have ideologies of how their father looks, how their mother looks, and how do they look. So we tell them to draw all these three things: a man, a woman, and a child. And some draw person test, especially the ones draw person test, which is for adults. The Goodenough and Harris drawing test was not for adults. This was for children. So for the ones which are for adults, they tell you to draw a person of an opposite gender. So if you're a female, they'll ask you to draw a male. So that's how instruction varies to the kind of age specification also that we have. So they are asked to draw a man, a woman, and obviously themselves. So interesting. You need to know that artistic skill emphasis is given to the child's ability to emphasize and observe the intricate ability of what a girl looks like, a woman looks like, and a man looks like. It does not focuses on your drawing abilities. I'm sure there are a lot of children who are not very good with that also. It observes how accurately and conceptually you differentiate between the fact that a man looks like a man and a woman looks like a woman. So if a child draws probably a man with very long hair, right, and with a no mustache, remember there could be something. And if he draws a woman with no hair, that could be again a little wrong. So now you see the pictures below. A student at the age of 5.5 made one. A student at the age of 2 made himself like that, like at age of 7 years old, student 2. Age of 3-year-old, that's a 9-year-old child. So see, the ability is increasing. A 5-year-old ability usually makes stick figures. Remember, there are stick figures only that you will find. Then you find the other. See, the 7-year-old got better. The 9-year-old is more defined. Look at the picture; it's so more defined. The eyes, which were a little deflected here, again gets better, and a 10-year-old looks very different. So student 4 is a 10-year-old. So see, the ability is increasing. The child is able to draw finely pictures. Now I'll show you another picture that you see here. Again, variations. This is again the same, a draw person test conducted with the testing of Goodenough and Harris testing. Again, scores are also given of the child. The scores are IQ scores only. Remember the time one, the above average is 111. Very, very clean picture. Hands are clean, feet are clean. Remember, the eyes is clean, the hair is clean of a man. The time two, the child made it, it was very superior. The score is being given as 145, very superior. Why? Look at the knees, shocks, feet, hang, fingernails. Everything is being mentioned. Hair, eyes, particularity, nose, everything is so peculiar. The third one is given an average, which is 112. The shoulders a little weird, but the structure is complete. The head is too small. Let's come down to the girl making a picture now, a women picture. So the average is 109 of the first one because the upper body is too short, the lower body is too big, the hair is not very defined, the nose is too big, physical features are not very. So it's like touching average. Now a superior, look at that. The drawing ability, look at the thickness of the legs, the attire that the women is wearing, the hair that the child is given, and obviously the fingers are visible. One, the fingers have even the nail visible. So this is how accurately you imagine a woman. Now the last is one of three, which is again average, not very clear, but remember, girl has long hair, the attire is a gown, and the body is clean. So body is clean. So why the ability in scoring has reduced? Remember, the 102 is very, it's not very structured. 109 still becomes structured in terms of clothing and hair. The 145 is completely clear in terms of its clothing and even in terms of the intricate features of the women, like the look at the buttons on the shirt. So this is how it has its own norms. When you start conducting these tests, you have your own norms with it, and good enough and Harris testing, these are one of those examples. Very interesting, based on projective technique, as I say it enough. Projective technique is based on psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud, which says these pictures give out the understanding of the unconscious. So something which is never coming out of your conscious level, they're helping you project it through the pictures. So that's what the difference is. Whereas the paper pencil test, which was, sorry, I'm moving a little at the back. These tests are paper pencil tests. They tell you the conscious understanding of your intelligence. This does not go to the unconscious. It does not rudely take out what were the, according to Sigmund Freud. It does not takes out your desires, your motive, your instincts, your life instincts and the death instincts, the sexual desires, all of those things don't come out. It comes out through draw person test, like this. Something that the child is not saying, is not able to verbalize, which was not even visible in the test like that, which was the previous one, the culture fair, the verbal test is coming out here. So this finishes with draw person test. We move to the last one that we have. This is called culture biased and based also. These are psychologists which develop culture fair according to the kind of culture that you belong to. I'll just read it out. However, it was realized that the impact of culture cannot eliminate completely. So there should be some test which should be made according to the culture. So it should be culturally biased. So why culturally biased? Like an individual coming from Bengal, an individual coming from down south would require a test which is coming in their own language, pictures which are of their own language and culture. So that's a culture bias test, which would be completely favoring a specific culture, favoring a specific background, and probably favoring a specific theme of their culture. So language is like per se the first thing. We do it as for like uh, when I said the first few examples that the Simon and Binet test was converted into Urdu and Punjabi, that's a culture bias test because we converted for the people of Punjab and for the people who are having a language which is Urdu concentrated culture language to a set of individuals. So it's important for them. How do they understand Hindi or English if they wish that Urdu is more favorable? I'm sure they understand the other languages also, but more favorable, more norm related is this. This is a culturally bias test, and in reasons where we want a culture free test, we go to culture fair test. So the fact which is coming in English or coming in Hindi in India is a culture fair test. Remember, intelligence is the ability, when we last conclude our session today, we have started the foundations to understand what was psychology, what was its evolution, how did psychology came to India. And psychology talks about cognition, developmental, there is memory, intelligence, personality. These are one of the most, what do you call this, one of the most important topics of psychology that was covered in foundations. So remember, intelligence thus is the ability to derive information, learn from experiences, again from the past experiences or experiences that is going from their conscious level, adapt to the environment, understand. Why adaptation? Intelligence is of a survival value. People who are not able to do well are not able to survive well. So that's why they come in the the low averages of our country. So adaptation to the environment, understanding correct and correctly utilizing the thought and reason. So it's like effectively using the learning, the knowledge that you gain from the environment and adapting from the environment, utilizing it at the right time, at the right place and at the right arena that you require. So that completes with intelligence, with theories, with assessment, the need of assessment. Why do we need to assess intelligence? What is the need? How people are different in terms of average intelligence to higher intelligence. And by the normal probability curve, we get to know not everyone is highly intelligent, not everyone is low intelligent. We have averages also, and we have above averages also in our society. So, intelligence will always be your ability to reason well, judge well, decide well. Thank you so much.